It's the 19th of May, 2024. In Grand Teton National Park, Shayne Burke has just survived a violent grizzly attack. Now he's alone in the woods, bleeding, broken, and waiting for help, hoping the bear doesn't return and that rescuers arrive before it's too late. This is part 2 of a special episode of The Choice. In The Choice, we follow Yellowstone's grizzlies and the people who cross their paths. Some stories are about the bears, others are about us, and the choices we make. This is one of the latter. Welcome to The Choice. But the conversation doesn't end here. The story is still being written, and we want you to be a part of it. Scan the code to sign up for the Wildline Dispatch and be the first to know when our community launches. Join us on our mission to redefine what it means to coexist. This episode contains adult language and content. Viewer discretion is advised.
It took about, I think, 2 hours from the moment I called my wife to around when it was a little over 2 hours, I think. Like my adrenaline started to wear off about an hour or so of sitting up there. And so I definitely started to get really like, all right, what's going on? Where are they? Like kind of getting a little, I don't know, very like, I don't want to say annoyed because got people working very hard to come save my life, but I was definitely getting like agitated because I'm like, dude, I know I'm not far from the road. Like this sucks. How can they not find me? And I was so goddamn thirsty, and I was on the phone at 911, and I'm like, listen, 50 feet away, there's a pile of snow, and I'm so thirsty, and I just want to like go get some snow and like wet the whistle, you know? And she was like, don't move, don't move. I'm like, it's 50 feet. And then like, literally like, I don't know, 30 seconds later, that's when I saw the helicopter up in the air, and I was like, oh my God, all right.
While Shayne lay bleeding in the woods, we stood on the ground and watched the rescue unfold. What we witnessed was nothing short of extraordinary. The coordination, the precision, the calm under pressure. It was like watching a world-class team in motion. We had always heard about these missions, but seeing one executed with our own eyes was humbling. For Shayne, those 2 hours must have felt like an eternity. But to assemble, stage, and then locate him in the vast backcountry with such efficiency, it was truly remarkable. But as remarkable as the rescue operation was to witness, imagine being Shayne in those woods. Every minute waiting wasn't just about survival, it carried the weight of uncertainty. Was he truly safe now, or could the bear come back at any moment?
So that was a major concern the whole time I was up there, and that's kind of why I chose the spot that I chose. I was extremely tired at that point. I just sprinted 200 yards up, like straight up a mountain, and then I found this area that just really seemed like a good enough spot. I was actually like scanning trees that I could possibly climb if I needed to. It was the most safe I felt, and the biggest fear, I had like three major fears. Um, Number one, the bear coming back. Very strong possibility. She ran towards the road. I just called for help. A lot of that help is going to be coming from the road. So I knew it was a very strong possibility that they could push the bear back towards me. Um, Number two, obviously I'm hemorrhaging pretty bad. So I knew loss of blood equals loss of life. So I knew that I could probably bleed out and die that way. And then also hypothermia was a real concern um, with that much blood loss. The temperature, as you know, it was warm during the day, but the temperature started to drop. They picked me up around a little after 5:30, I think. And at that point, I was up there shivering, and like, I had a very light hoodie with me. We call them waffle tops, but I had that on. I put that back on, and that's all I had was that, my pants and my t-shirt.
The rescue operation was underway. Run by the Jenny Lake Rangers and Grand Teton Search and Rescue, teams recognized around the world for their skill and precision. But even world-class operations take time to launch. Helicopters must be staged, coordinates confirmed, and risks weighed. For Shayne, lying alone in the forest, badly injured, and not knowing if the bear would come back, every second must have felt like an hour. And then, more waiting. Problems with location coordinates slowed the mission further. Search teams circled overhead, but finding Shayne in the dense woods proved more difficult than expected. Minutes stretched into an eternity.
So I was on the phone with 911, and essentially what was happening was, um, though I had service, it was very, very bad. It was like one bar at best. So texts were coming in, but they couldn't go back out for some reason. And so like the national park, they sent me, or Jenny Lake Rangers sent me a text with like a link. Click this link, it's going to give us your location. I'm clicking it, like nothing's going through because I have to connect to the internet for that link to work. So I'm like, this is so frustrating. And so I have Google Maps open and I have Onyx open, and I'm copy and pasting the coordinates from both those apps, sending them directly to my wife. And then, it took like 10 minutes just for my text to go back out. It was taking forever. Eventually, I was on the phone with my wife too, and she's like, the Rangers are saying the coordinates you're giving us don't make sense. There's no way you're nowhere near Signal Mountain. Like they're saying you're way over far away. I'm like, I'm not that far. I kept telling her, I'm like, I am literally like 800 yards away from the road. Finally, she's like, all right, dispatch wants you to call them. They're going to triangulate you. So I called 911, went right through, on the phone with her, and then she's like, okay, we're going to put the helicopter in the air. Let me know if you hear it. I'm like, hear it? I can see it. Like, she's like, oh my God, you can see it. I'm like, yeah, like I literally can see it. It's not that far. And she's like, okay, well, give me some directions. I'm like, okay. So if they stop flying and hover and turn to their 3 o'clock and fly straight, they're almost going to fly directly on top of me. So that's what they did. Flew over, past me. I'm waving, gesticulating towards them. They come around. They do a big circle because I said, "Hey, they're flying over me. They're flying right over me." So I meant, they stopped and then did like a big circle and they came over on like my 11 o'clock, and they're hovering there. And I'm like, "Tell them to turn to their three again." And they're gonna pretty much fly right over me, and tell them to go real slow, and I'll tell you when they're above me. And then they turned, they pointed their nose like where they would fly right across me, and then they go, "We got him. We see him." I was just so joyful in that moment when I saw the helicopter just like break the tree line, and I was like, I can see the helicopter. And for the first time in that 2 hour period, I was like, all right, you might survive this. And I had been doing a little bit of like blood work and like noticing that my blood bleeding was slowing. So I was like losing fear of bleeding out, but I still had the fear of the bear and I still had fear of hypothermia. And so they're hovering there, and I'm like, what are they doing now? Like, why aren't they coming here? I was like, you know what, screw it. And then I just roll over my belly and I start crawling to the clearing that they're at. And as soon as I do that, I made it like 5 feet, and then I hear someone yell my name, and then I turn around and then I see a ranger like maybe 30, 40 yards away, and I'm just like, thank God. All right. And then that was when I really just like took a deep breath, rolled over, and then he instantly just started cutting my clothes off, asking some small, light questions, like, obviously he's like, Shayne Burke. I'm like, yep, that's me. I asked that, kind of infamous question of like, what are you guys going to do to this bear? And he's like, well, we got to look into that. And I was like, well, I hope you guys don't kill the bear. And he's like, well, we're gonna look into it, but right now we got to make sure you're good.
The first ranger knelt to triage Shayne's injuries. And Shayne's first question wasn't about himself. It was about the bear. Not whether he would live, but whether the bear would die. In that moment, his character shone through. Even as he fought for his own survival, he carried empathy for the wild.
As soon as he connected with me, it was like I closed my eyes, I opened my eyes, and there's probably 12 rangers all around me. Like, um, I see them set up a perimeter of 12 gauge shotguns, and I'm just looking around. I'm like, all right, you're safe, dude. This is the safest you've probably ever been your whole life. You're okay. I noticed that, ironically, on the drive from Yellowstone into Tetons, we were actually listening to a podcast about the Jenny Lake Rangers. And so when they were working on me, I was like, "Are you guys Jenny Lake Rangers?" And they're like, "Yeah, we are." I was like, "I just listened to a podcast about y'all. You guys are. I'm really happy you're the ones taking care of me right now." I knew that this interaction wasn't the bear's fault. It wasn't my fault either, but things just happen, and I would never forgive myself if that bear had to be killed on my account. So I wanted to make it as clear as possible that was my stance. Even though I know my stance really doesn't have any weight when it comes to what the park inevitably would end up doing. But I wanted them to know that like that bear was acting naturally and only attacked me because I accidentally got too close to her and her cub. Making improvised tourniquets was the best and only thing I could do for myself, not having anything but these type of wounds. With that type of hemorrhaging, you still want to pack them with gauze, right? So initially, like once they showed up, instantly they just cut all the tourniquets off and just all my clothes off, and they started to just instantly start packing me with gauze, and that is incredibly painful. um, and they every time, they're flipping me, rolling me over, doing this, making me do this, like, and they're just like, oh, got another hole, got another one, got another one, got another one. It's like, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on the first ranger's name, which bothers me because he was really cool. But Isabel, she was amazing. She was right on my left shoulder almost the whole interaction. She
Was she the one from the helicopter?
No, that was Lex. Lex was in the helicopter. She's the one that flew with me. Isabel is just one of the foot rangers. She's a patrol ranger. and she's a Navy veteran. Her and I connected pretty well. I haven't spoken to her since I was there last, but think about her often and just like felt really incredibly safe with her right there and to get me stable, IVs, zero pain meds. Um, and then they packed me into, I don't remember the name of it, but I just call it a burrito. And it's basically, I was in this thing super tight. Like I felt like I could barely breathe. They lower the connector down. They hook me in. Lex gets hooked in, and then they pull me out of the woods.
As rangers and rescuers did their work, the rest of us stood in uneasy stillness, watching, waiting. For Shayne, every second must have been endless. For us, every glance to the horizon carried the same question: would he make it in time? And then, after what felt like forever, the helicopter appeared in the distance, bringing with it a wave of relief. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Shayne away from the attack site. Later, we asked him what was going through his mind during that flight. His answer was one of the most emotional moments of our entire interview.
Um, Very surreal. I just, I don't know. It felt like, um, I don't even really have any way to describe it. It just, yeah, I never really thought about that since. Um, I don't know.
Why did that bother you the most? It's been one of the questions that's bothered you the most that I asked.
I just, it was a very emotional 5 minute helicopter ride. Like, I knew going into it that I was going to see a lot of people. They were going to be recording one of the, like, there were a lot of people there taking videos and rubbernecking. And this was one of the worst days of my life. And it just felt very, it was just the period that I had to prepare for that, I guess. And I just had no idea. Things got kind of more real once once I got picked up in the helicopter, and then I knew, like, okay, like all the really scary stuff is over, but now I'm going to learn what is wrong with me exactly, the extent of the damage, the publicity that's going to follow. Like, I had no idea the fallout, the amount of fallout that was to come, and good and bad. quick helicopter ride. That's when you see me coming in. They drop me in the parking lot, and then get me out of that, throw me on a stretcher or a gurney, whatever they're called, go in the ambulance, and then it was like boom, round two. Um, I go in there, obviously, like at this point, like I don't know what really took the edge off. I was in pain, but not like tremendous pain. But that bear spray had started to really like get into my pores, and it never like affected my eyes or anything like that. I never like was unable to breathe or anything, but it was just burning my skin, and I was just like, so they're working on me, and they're like, oh, do you need anything? I was like, I would love a little bit of water. We can't give you water. I'm like, come on, I haven't drank in hours, and I just felt like I ran a marathon, and so they're like, I was like, well, can you get this, like, try to get this bear spray off me? I mean, that is like what's got me super uncomfortable. And so they like start wiping me down as much as they could. My whole back is just covered in bear spray. And then so a ranger came into the ambulance, introduced himself, and he was going to be the lead investigator of the incident itself. And he was kind of, the key guy that would have determined whether or not this interaction was my fault, the bear's fault, or nobody's fault. So he started asking some questions, and in my head, I'm like, I just want to get to the fucking hospital and get worked on. But of course, I want to be as cooperative as possible. And so there, he came in. He's like, "Hey, do you mind if I take pictures of your wounds?" And I'm like, "Go for it, man." Um, and he's like, "Well, just take a couple minutes." And he asked me like, "All right, what kind of bear was it?" I was like, "It was a grizzly bear." "How do you know?" Like, big hump, big brown bear, very aggressive. It was a grizzly bear. And he's like, "Okay, did you see any like markings on it, identifying tags, anything like that?" I'm like, honestly, man, my eyes were fixed on her eyes, and that was it. I really didn't look at her ears to see if she had any tags or anything like that, but I think I would have noticed if she had a tag. I didn't see a tag. So he's like, "All right, take pictures of the wounds." He like, yeah, he looks at one wound and he's like, "Oh man." He like looks at them, he whispers something to them, and they like shrug their shoulders, and they're like, "We got to repack all these." And I'm like, "Come on." So they had to take all the gauze out and repack it. They were just too saturated. I was bleeding through. So that sucked. Round two of that was not fun. They like Chloe, and as soon as I saw her, I was just like, "Hey, please don't cry. I'm gonna be okay. We're okay. We're gonna get through this." And then I was like, "All right, get out. I want to go to the hospital. Get out of here. Like, I'll see you at the hospital." And we sit there for 45 minutes, and I'm like, "Dude, oh, this is agonizing."
We found Chloe sitting by herself, the quiet in her posture revealing the storm she must have been feeling inside. We had approached her to see if she was okay and if there was anything that we could do for her. This was a traumatic moment for her too, but what struck us most was her strength. She explained that once she had spoken to Shayne and knew he was alive, she could find her own calm. Her resilience mirrored his. They would soon be reunited after what must have felt like an eternity. How did it feel for Shayne to finally see his wife again?
I was unfortunately like I'm a very like stoic, uh, tough love kind of guy. So it was kind of just like very, I when she showed up, I was like, "Don't cry, don't cry. We're fine. We're gonna be okay." And in my head, I'm like, "Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. You're okay." So it was just pure relief, and I'm glad that they let her in to say hi. And like I just don't do well when people are emotional around me. Like it's hard for me to, especially when it's my fault. So
My fault.
sure, but it wasn't my fault. But it's like my choices, my desire of solitude is what kind of got me in that situation, I guess, because like I like these adventures. I tend to enjoy more by myself because then I don't have to worry about other people. I don't have to go as slow as I need to for other people, things like that. So they're very selfish desires. And it was our honeymoon, so I didn't have to be alone, you know? But when you have a 23-day honeymoon, like you're gonna have time apart. You're gonna do separate things, and that's okay. I was glad to see her. I was really happy to see her. She's my person, you know, and we've been through a lot together. So, and I think it did a lot for her for peace of mind. Um, Having her background in emergency medicine, now in nursing school, like I know her seeing me alive, alert, um, talking, all that probably eased her mind quite a bit. So
Shayne was finally safe, but his journey was far from over. Now an equally hard part of survival was about to begin, the long road of recovery. Looking at the extent of his injuries, you'd think he must have been in the hospital for at least a week.
one day, it's kind of crazy. I'll never speak ill of anyone who participated in my rescue and of that day, but I definitely think me staying there for a day wasn't an issue, but I do think there were certain things that, you know, under circumstances like any other hospital probably would have done x-rays. Um, and so yeah, I was only in the hospital for literally 24 hours, a little less than 24 hours. Um, and they knew like we were traveling and they knew that we were sleeping in our van. So they were like, you could stay, but it's gonna be like 5 grand a day. And I was like, yeah, no, we'll get a hotel. We'll figure it out. They had to wait a while for me to go into surgery because I had eaten at noon, so they didn't want to put me under. Um, so essentially, when I got into the hospital, there's a staff, huge team waiting for me. They roll me in, and it was just like, I don't know, probably 12 nurses and practitioners just going through everything. They get the surgeon in there. He's writing on me in Sharpie and this, and that, and we're having a conversation. Um, so the nursing staff was amazing. Every single nurse I had was just so genuine. You could tell like they really cared. Um, and so the next day, like, you know, all I needed at that point, based on their scope of what they assessed, was just antibiotics at that point. At that point, the biggest fear was obviously infection. Once my IV antibiotics were over, they're like, you don't have to stay here anymore. Like, you know, I was like, cool, let's go. I don't like, yeah, it was lovely, but I don't want to eat hospital food if I don't have to. So we were going through everything. The nurse was showing Chloe, my wife, you know, wound care stuff and just like, you know, what they recommend doing. And then all of a sudden the nurse looks at my shoulder and she's like, your shoulder always looked like that? And I just go, whoa! And I was like, no, that has never bulged like that in my whole life. And I had this big bulge sticking out of my shoulder. And she's like, I'm just gonna get the ortho. And they looked at it and like, you got dislocation. It's fine. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Get me the hell out of here. I can't lift it past here. And they're like, it'll just slip back into place. It's fine. I'm like, okay, cool. We stayed in town for two nights, 3 days because the national park still had to do its investigation. So they had my phone, they had my camera. Essentially, like they said it very nicely, like, we, like, are you comfortable sharing your phone's pictures and data with us just to prove, you know, you weren't out there doing something stupid? And I'm like, absolutely. I have nothing to hide. You can have access to whatever you want. Um, so they, you know, it took 2 days for them to come in and have a chat with us. Um, and again, like, you know, obviously the bear came up and I was like, hey, like, what are you guys going to do to this bear if you identify it? And, I just want to stress, like, I don't, if I have any say in this whatsoever, like, please consider not hurting this bear. And we talked about that for a minute. We went over like all my pictures. I proved that we started our day in Yellowstone and made our way south. That we literally were only there for before the attack for an hour. Like it was, basically had to cover like prove where I was and everything like that. And they weren't like aggressive about it. It wasn't like an intense investigation, but
I mean, what could you have been doing wrong other than walking up and petting it? I don't understand.
that was one concern. Like, did I have pictures of the bears? You know, did I have any videos of me? Because you see these people, you see the Torons, obviously, right? They wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing that, so I showed them everything. I showed them all of my anything that I took that day, anything on my camera I took that day. I tried to show them best of my ability. Like, look, here's the last picture I took before the attack. Its GPS says I was at this spot on Signal Mountain. I was never, because you know, like between you and me, there's obviously a kill dump site out there somewhere. So that was where the big speculation from the, not the locals, I won't say the locals because most locals contacted me and were like, these people that are harassing you are not locals, but whatever. Yeah. So essentially I'm gonna have to dig deep in the memory box for a second. 9 surgical sites, uh, some like 16 puncture wounds, um, a lot of muscle damage in my right leg, which is mostly healed. Definitely like feel it still sometimes, and initially it was really rough. But the most damaging thing is just broken shoulder. That really sucks. There's a lot of nerve damage in there. But all in all, like that's the gist of it. Nothing happened to my hand outside of a little nerve damage and some tenderness, but realistically, I might not have a functional hand if that went any other way. Even though I could see my left arm bone, didn't break my bone, so very lucky there. I'll never deny the fact that there was a whole lot of luck that kept me alive in that situation, and a little bit of grit and a little bit of knowledge of what to do. Like I'm incredibly fortunate that it wasn't worse. So 100% on my mind for this trip, knowing we are going to Yellowstone, the Tetons, that general bear um, sanctuary. Like, I knew they exist out there. I knew they were a risk. I did a lot of bear research prior to this trip. That's why we got the bear spray before. We took it very seriously, and I would say one of the fundamental uh, bear safety fundamentals that I guess I overlooked was when I'm in the woods, and especially when I'm not trying to be quiet anymore, I, I have this habit of just moving really fast. I'm very fit. I do this all the time out here on the East Coast. Like, I being in the military, like I can cover some ground very fast. I've done 20 miles in less than 8 hours before. Like I can move. And so all of those things considered, like I was loud. Um, I was alone, which is, one of the no-nos. However, I had multiple Jackson Hole photographers message me and say, that could be me any day of the week. I'm out there alone, Monday through Friday, or 7 days a week. Like that could always be me. And like I had my bear spray, I had an accessible location, but the one thing I did was I moved too fast. And so my main theory on it, like when I reflect back on that day, from the moment I saw the bears, they were all like, well, I saw the cub already running away from me. Okay. And then when I saw the mom coming at me, when I saw that sow, she was coming towards me from the same direction the bear was running away from. Once the attack stopped, I ran back the way I came, but I ran through this big pile of snow. And when I looked in that snow, there were bear tracks going towards me the way I was coming from. So, my theory is I was moving towards them. They did hear me. They had already turned around and started going the other way. But because I didn't know they were there, I was covering too much ground too fast, snuck up on them, and got too close before I realized and it was too late.
It's possible for a tragic encounter to unfold with no one at fault, not Shayne and not the bear. Shayne was prepared, carrying bear spray and knowing the rules of bear country. But hindsight reveals how decisions like moving fast through thick brush may have played a role. They weren't wrong decisions, just the kind of moments that show how fragile coexistence can be.
I guess I should have just, the only thing I would change is I would have just slowed down. I should have just been more present in the moment and not worried as much. Because at that point, I was like, in my head, I need to get back to the car because I got a worried wife. I told her I'd be back in an hour. We're over an hour now. So I think that's the only thing that I would change that could have had a different outcome. Other than that, I was doing what I love to do. I was doing it responsibly, and I would do it all over again. Like I would absolutely like. I'd have some reservations about being alone at this point, but I would absolutely go back. I would go back to Signal Mountain. I would go back in the wilderness and experience it because that's what I love to do, and there's no point in trying to change something that happened. I think, regardless, my situation, the way I was open about it, the way that I pleaded with the national park to not harm the bear, I think that drew a lot more positive attention. Hey, if this guy can be attacked by a bear and still have this positive attitude towards these animals, let's rethink this scope that we have on these being dangerous maniac animals. And you know, I would like to hope and believe that something in my situation only helped conserve bears than have a negative impact on them, but I don't know that for sure.
This was clearly a traumatic encounter. So how has it impacted how he feels about bears?
Maybe love them more. Definitely have a different respect for them. Like obviously I knew they were dangerous, but it's like, you know, a lot of through the, we're a year and a half out from this attack, and through that year and a half, I've conversed with a lot of people that are, I mean, I've had Green Berets and Navy SEALs reach out to me and be like, "You're crazy, dude. I would never survive that." It's like, you're a Green Beret, dude. Like, I think you might. Anyway, but I've also had like, small petite people be like, "Oh, I would never," and I would never survive that or this or that. And it's like, listen, if you asked me before this encounter if I would have survived this encounter, I would say no. When these things happen to us, we never know how we're gonna react. And like I said, I when this encounter happened, it unlocked a primal sensation in me that I've almost never really unlocked before, and I went into like default mode of just really reacting uh in a way that like I don't know, I really like everything shut down for me and I just went into like the survival mode. And so I don't think I usually tell people like, yeah, I might have survived it once, but if this were to ever happen to me again, I don't think I'd survive it again. Like, um, no, this encounter only solidified the respect I have for them and only made me more curious about them and love them even more. So.
Walking out of the hospital wasn't the end of Shayne's ordeal. It was just the start of a new kind of battle. The stitches and staples would heal, and the bones would mend. But the weight of reliving the attack, the fear, the memories, those would prove to be an even tougher road.
It was tough at first. Like, I basically, after the shoulder surgery, the surgeon was like, look, it could take 5 months for this to really heal, like before you should go back to work or anything like that. And I'm like, fuck, five months without work, that's gonna be hard. I took the whole time because mentally it was hard. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat that. I didn't sleep right. I still don't sleep right. For the first time in my life, I'm on psych meds because I, yeah, I literally would be extremely tired, get in bed, and just stare at the ceiling and wouldn't be able to fall asleep until 7 a.m. That 5 month window, I did, I all the superficial stuff healed fine. The shoulder definitely has set me back a lot. I'm very athletic, rock climber. I used to compete in rock climbing. Was a very ambitious outdoor rock climber. I've climbed some really hard routes, and that this encounter's all but taken that away from me. Haven't really been out and doing that as much as I used to. Physically, like the shoulder is just it's different. It's weaker. No matter what I try to do, I'm always constantly trying to like strengthen it, but it just feels absolutely weaker when you don't use an arm for 5 months. Like it, you lose a lot. Yeah. So, but I'm definitely on the mends. Physically, I'm good. The shoulders, getting back to where it was. Um, and then the emotional, mental side is just going to be an ongoing thing that I'm just going to have to work through.
For Shayne, what was harder, the mental or physical recovery?
Definitely the mental. Um, it's made things resurface in my cabinet brain, and just trauma in general unlocks other trauma. So it's definitely been something I've had to navigate. You know, but I've got a village behind me that's really helped me through it. Both new friends, old friends, internet friends, like it's all been incredibly heartwarming, and has really opened my eyes to just how good the human race can be when in times of need. So it's definitely reliving it. It's like this never bothers me. Like talking about it doesn't really bother me, but it's there are times when I'm like, I I'm currently in the middle of buying a house right in the big area of where I'm out in the woods the most, where I do most of my wildlife photography, where I hunt. Um, and it's definitely taken a little bit out of my ambition, to get out there and do that. I'm not afraid of the dark, but I'm afraid what lurks in the dark. And like so, right now we're tiptoeing right into the moose rut, and I really really want to get some good pictures of bull moose. And I last weekend I got up at 3 in the morning to get out in the woods, and I parked in front of the gate and I sat out the gate until the sun came out. I just couldn't do it, and I know there's no grizzlies out there.
In moments like these, training matters. Shayne's military background gave him the discipline to stay calm and to act under pressure. Chloe's EMT training gave her the calm to support him. Their combined strength helped tip the balance toward survival.
Definitely. The military, it for the most part, it really, I mean, it all everyone's military experience is different. How they handle it is very different. I grew up with a very hard childhood. Um, so the military was very easy for me to exist in. And I took a lot of my experiences in my early life with the military and really got through a lot of things. So case in point would be like when when I first got into Iraq, so I was in a transportation company and I saw a mechanic, and my sole purpose and job on these convoys was obviously maintenance. So if anything broke down or anything like that, so I was the only one in charge of that. I'm the subject matter expert of maintenance. So if anything got blown up, anything broke down, everyone looks to me. I'm a 21-year-old kid, uh, and suddenly I'm in charge of upwards of 60 vehicles and all the equipment, and I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to do. And like I have to make choices in those when things go south, when people look to you as just a specialist 21-year-old kid and go, what are we going to do about this? And it's like you got to think about things and you have to adapt really quickly, and you just got to think under pressure. So I definitely think my military career absolutely contributed not only to my survival but just how I a handled the situation before, during, and after. um, and obviously like the medical side, like, don't get me wrong, my wife was amazing. She really snapped me out of that. Like I said earlier, like I was throwing myself a little pity party, like I'm gonna die up here. I did make peace with that logic, but she really snapped me out of that mindset of like, stop feeling sorry for yourself and just address the issue right now. You can do this. And then that's when I was like, you can do this, you know how to do this. And that's when I took my military training and applied it to my survival, and like obviously stopping the bleed and whatnot. um, and just like land navigation, knowing what directions north, south, east, west, like all those things.
After everything he endured, you'd think the bear would leave the deepest scars. But for Shayne, the most painful wounds came from people. Online cruelty turned his survival into a target, blaming him, even wishing he hadn't made it out alive.
I would say, well, it most definitely changed me. I would say like, yeah, I mean, it just made me a more purpose driven person, like a very made me more thankful for life in and itself. Made me really thankful for my community. Not for nothing, but like the internet is a savage wasteland, and like it literally, there were a lot of things that I had to navigate, and you know, you in my head, I knew everything I did that day. I knew what contributed to the attack, what didn't. I knew the risks I took. Like I was well aware of all of that. What really bothered me is like the speculations and the lies that people are just making stuff up. That really irritated me. Just because like you, you guys didn't, you guys weren't there. You didn't know the story, and it's yeah, that was a hard thing to overcome. And a lot of people are like, oh, don't pay attention to them, fuck them, and it's like that's cool, but when like you open your inbox of literally hundreds of messages, and for every like 200 messages there's one of those that was like, you're a giant piece of shit, you should have died out there, like that is very disheartening, and really sucks because it's like I know in my head I did everything right, but then you kind of question yourself like, but what if I didn't? Like, what if they're right? And then you just go in this downward spiral, and it's like that can do a lot to somebody and
Oh,
anybody.
yeah.
And so like I would consider myself having thick skin, but that really like really grew my skin because I that was rough, man, for a while. Most of the locals were very positive and very kind. I'm friends with a lot of them on Instagram. We talk almost weekly, if not daily. Um, and so, I've only reached out to a couple people, just let them know, hey, if you want to connect, like we're going to be there for literally like 48 hours. Um, so we got to see a couple people, and we were very secretive while we were there. People asked. I only told our hotel shuttle driver, and he like it was kind of funny because he was like, "Oh, what brings you here?" And then Chloe and I kind of look at each other and like look at him and like, "All right, you seem like good people. We'll tell you." And so he told him, and he like stops the car, and he's like, "That was you?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "Man," he's like, "We're all just so happy you're alive and okay." I'm like, "Thanks, man. I knew you're good people. That means a lot." Um, yeah, but I was worried to like run into certain people that were very aggressive on the internet and not. I just didn't want to bring any drama.
It's almost unimaginable that Shayne's biggest fear wasn't returning to the place of his trauma, or even the bear itself. His greatest fear came from his critics, from the people who attacked him online. Much of that backlash came from other photographers and members of the community who doubted his story. Many claimed he wasn't really looking for owls, but that he was heading for what's known as the dump, where the park disposes of carcasses, a place sometimes frequented by bears. Denying his story was one thing, but some people didn't stop there. They turned their cruelty on a disabled combat veteran, a man who put his life on the line for his country. How low can you go? The accusation said more about the cynicism of others than about the truth of his experience.
I didn't know the dump existed until they blasted on the internet that dump exists. So my response to that is all those photographers that are saying that about me have only put that dump site on the map on the internet for other people to actually go out and look for it now. So inadvertently have probably caused more harm than I did. I've never seen a great gray owl. That was the only reason why we were out there. Obviously, I knew bears exist out there, but that was not my desire, not one bit. From what locals told me, I sent them screenshots of my Onyx location, where I was attacked, where I was, where my last picture was that I took. And these are well known photographers, so I'm not going to name drop them, but they even said, okay, like, yeah, the entrance to the dump site is where you were, but the dump site's miles down that road. And I'm not sure if you're familiar where the dump site is, but so, and that's the thing, like, that's what irritated me about it, because if they truly care about these bears so much, why would you even promote there being a dump site out there? Like, why would you put that information on the internet? Because now my story drew hundreds of thousands of views, like millions actually, in some cases. Like, now people absolutely know that there's this kill dump site there.
The accusations and speculation took on a life of their own. But in the end, what really mattered wasn't opinion, it was the facts. And the Park Service launched a full investigation into the incident. Their conclusion was clear: neither Shayne nor the bear were at fault. It was a tragic meeting of chance and circumstance, a reminder that in wild places, even when everyone does their best, risk remains.
No, the investigation started immediately, right? So once they found me, I gave them the details. I told them where I came from. It was very easy blood trail to follow. Um, and so instantly they obviously quarantined the area. And they basically took my statement. They took my equipment, so my camera and my phone. They took obviously pictures of what happened and they compiled all of this during the investigation to, okay, they went to this site, they determined that I was coming from this direction, the bears came from this direction. They said the scene was pretty grim, uh, but everything I said that I did, they said that it aligned with their investigation and what they found. Obviously, my wounds all reflect that I got into this position and went for the ride that I went for. I have no wounds on the front of me. And obviously they follow the blood trail. Boom. So they, like, a few days later, when they came to my hotel room and we discussed, again, I walked them through everything. My story didn't change once. My story still has never changed. They went through my phone. Obviously, like, I have the GPS coordinates for every picture I took that day. And so I had like a very vague, direct, like, not a perfect, because one of the first things they asked was like, did you have a GPS tracking where you were? I was like, no, I didn't, but I did take pictures so we can see at least. I never was more than a mile away from the road. And I didn't take a lot of pictures on my cell phone, but I took a few. And so, anyway.
You weren't in an area that was, let's say, do not enter, correct?
Right. And that's the thing. Like, my nurse, one of my nurses was like, she's like, honey, I go up Signal Mountain in the summer, ride my bike up there with friends and have a margarita on the summit. Like, that's a ritual we do every week. Like, she's like, you were not in a bad place. Like, there's no reason for you to feel the way you feel, but obviously I'm going to feel that way. But yeah, so the investigation was pretty thorough, but they never made me feel like a criminal or anything like that. Never really, like, I knew like the possibility was there because like people do harass these animals and stuff. And so I wanted to make it clear, like, that was not my intention. I was not out there I literally, like, if I saw a bear, sure, I would have taken a picture of it if we were at a reasonable safe distance, but
Me too.
that's not the target animal I had in mind. Like, I really, like, most of the time I was like this, like, looking for birds. Essentially, they found me not at fault for anything criminal or anything like that. They found the bear to be acting in a natural capacity. They did draw bear DNA from my clothing. And I don't think they'll ever come out publicly with like whether or not they know what bear it is. I am in contact with the bear biologist, and he told me he would share that information with me when they get it. And it's up to me if I want to come public about it, and I don't think I will.
The Park Service fully investigated what happened that day. Their conclusion was clear. Neither Shayne nor the bear were at fault. And let's not forget, only two beings were actually there that day, Shayne and the bear. What right do any of us have to judge? Shayne doesn't blame the bear, yet people blame him. Think about that. But Shayne wasn't just attacked by the bear. He was attacked by us when he was most vulnerable. The bear was protecting her cub. What is our excuse? Maybe it's time we admit the truth. The bears aren't the problem. We are. And until we face that, nothing will change. It's easy to sit behind a screen and cast blame. It's harder to face the truth that wild places carry risk, and sometimes tragedy unfolds with no one to blame. What Shayne endured could have happened to anyone. Through it all, he's carried more than just scars. He's carried perspective. And in the end, we thought it was only right to leave the final word to him.
I don't know. I mean, I just hope that my experience teaches somebody something. I hope it can prevent at least one, if not multiple, future encounters. These animals are incredible and they're extremely misunderstood, and I think, you know, we all deserve this space that we all deserve to enjoy this space. And, you know, I don't know, it's so hard. Yeah, we covered a lot, so I just want people to use my experience for positive learning experience. I want people to maybe think twice about being mean on the internet. Like, it's because, you know, there's no reason really for it, but, you know, my situation couldn't have been more like, I don't know.
This is the choice